You're looking for a new Japanese knife, but you may be a little bit apprehensive to pull the trigger because you've heard of how delicate they are. In today's video, I'm gonna fuck up a Japanese knife so you don't have to. All right, guys, we're gonna start with the big three reasons why damage is occurring to your knife. Those being twisting, prying, and cutting things you should not cut. We'll start, of course, with twisting. Now, we're gonna use parsley to get our point across for this one. Typically, we find people come into the shop with damage to their knife, cutting something that's relatively soft or perceived as being easily cut with a Japanese knife. And this parsley is going to perfectly exemplify the point that it is not what you're cutting, but how you're cutting an ingredient that may or may not cause damage to your knife. So when we're cutting parsley, we're typically going for like a nice fine chop, and a lot of people will use a rocking motion when they're doing this. This is totally fine, and we recommend using the one finger rule, meaning when you're applying pressure to your knife, use only one finger. This will keep you from applying too much pressure down into the board while you're using that rocking motion. Now, you might not notice this, but when you're using this rocking motion, typically your knife is actually kind of twisting on the board like so, and this is really, really bad for the knife. If you hear like little dings and stuff as you're using your rocking motion, you're right on the edge of chipping your knife. So let's chip this knife and see how far we can take it. So generally people will get to this point just fine. You notice I was using a rocking motion, I was not applying any pressure down on the knife into the board, and I've got no damage to my knife. So the damage is going to come when we're using this motion. And there I was using two fingers, so I broke my own rule already, but I know that I'm not applying too much pressure down. What you do not want to do is this. Oh, we got some chips. We got a little minor chip. Let me do it. If you're experiencing any damage to your knife when doing this, then you're really applying too much pressure down into the board as you're twisting your knife across. We're back with a squash here, guys, and this is going to show us the prying motion and what that can do to our knife. Now, chances are, if you're new to Japanese knives, you've been using German knives or just an old stainless steel knife that's dull and quite thick behind the edge. Where you're going to run into issues with this nice, thin, sharp knife is when you're prying. So what we're going to do with this squash is we're going to cut off the big tubular part at the top here. A lot of people like to peel their squash with a knife, and a lot of people also like to sort of like pry and twist their knife as they're doing so. So let's see what that does to our knife. I'm just gonna like snap the thing in half more than... No, she's still straight. We didn't pick the right knife to fuck up, apparently. Man, okay, well, I'm apparently really bad at breaking knives, so this guy is much stronger than I had originally thought it would be, but you may have a knife that's thinner and more delicate than this knife, and if perchance it is thinner and more delicate, doing things like this is definitely going to cause damage to your knife. Sorry, guys, I failed you. I failed at failing. I never thought I'd be so frustrated to not break my knife. Well, anyways, you guys get the point. These are things you should not be doing. You may get away with them from time to time, but over the long term, if you continue doing bad things with your knife, you're gonna get damage. So Jake raises a good point here. We're not seeing much damage to this knife, but we're just getting really lucky at this point. If we continued doing this, I am certain we would get like a big ol' like nickel-sized chip out of our blade here. One that would eat into the cladding of our knife, which is really, really bad. And one that would cost, like if you were to bring it into our shop, upwards of $100 to get fixed. So while you may get away with it a couple times, it's that one time that it does chip that's really gonna, do some serious damage. There are a lot of things you should not cut with your Japanese knife. The general rule of thumb here is if you wouldn't bite through it with your teeth, you should not cut through it with your knife. Such things include lobster shells, hard woody stems like those found on rosemary or the middle part of a head of garlic, bones, the stem of a squash, for instance, and this is where we're going to start. Let's see what happens. That sounded terrible. Oh, still nothing. Come on. Oh, I'm gonna twist and frickin'. Man, this knife is we picked too strong a knife. Okay, well, we got away with it this time, but you should not do that. Don't do it. Okay, so yeah, there you go. This is like literally wood. So you would not bite through a piece of wood. Jeez. You shouldn't, nor will you really be able to cut through it with a knife either. I mean, we're still okay though. That's this funny thing about it. Come on. Break. All right, so we got away with cutting the stem of a squash. Let's see, maybe we'll magically be able to cut through a chicken bone. I don't know. I don't have high hopes here, but we'll see what happens. What should I do? Just break it down first? I don't know how to spatchcock a chicken. Okay, we're gonna spatchcock this chicken. So we're gonna go through the spine here. Cut out the spine, flap this guy open, and debone it while keeping the chicken whole. Keeping the whole chicken whole. Oh, see, I've got it. I'm trying to cut through the bone. It's still fine. So obviously I was doing a lot of things that I should not do, but somehow we're still okay. We're still just got that little chip there from the twisting and torquing on the board. I've got the spine out of my chicken here. Another one that I see commonly is like when people try to take the wing off or are trying to take the thigh off. We get into the joint a little bit. And then we may be new to butchering chicken and we may not understand like where the joint actually is. And we may be sort of twisting and prying as we cut through the chicken here like so. Like, I mean, that's really bad. And still nothing. Trying to fuck up a Japanese knife, but being unsuccessful.
I'm like mortified back here watching.
I thought I would not. Actually, I always love doing this, like, because it's like stuff you should never do with your knife. So like it's fun to be. It's fun to be able to do it. Okay, let's do something that like really should not be done, which is like literally the small bones are typically okay. Like I'm happy to break down a piece of salmon and like go through the spine or something like that, but this is a big old hefty chicken bone leg here. I'm gonna try to cut through by hitting too hard, by twisting, by torquing. I'm gonna do all three and see if we can actually get some damage on this knife. We're through the chicken bone and we're fine. There we go. We got a chip. And we did get a little chip in our knife there. So don't go cutting through chicken bones. You may get away with a couple times there, obviously, as we did, but you know, chances are if you continue treating your knife in such a way, it's not going to stand up. Let's try oh. So there we did two things that you should not do. We cut an ingredient we should not be cutting, and we cut the ingredient we should not be cutting improperly. If there is a way to properly cut something you shouldn't cut, which there is not. But I was trying to cut through this chicken bone and I was really twisting, torquing on it. And we saw the most aggressive damage we've seen so far. So there you go, guys. Don't be cutting through bones, hard woody stems. And if you are gonna cut through them straight forward and backwards, up and down. So Jake made a great point here. We're kind of learning that, what you cut is certainly important to keep in mind. There are certainly things you don't want to cut through. And though this is a quite thin knife, it might not be the most delicate knife we have in the shop or that you have personally come across. But what we're learning here is that twisting and torquing are really the biggest culprits to causing damage to your knife. What you cut can be damaging, but not as damaging. So our first 3 reasons for damage caused to your knife are things that may come with a little bit of inexperience if you've never used a Japanese knife. So those are, could be forgiven, I guess we could say. What can't be forgiven is just total carelessness with your knife. And a couple examples that we can think of are prying open a can. Never do that. We'll show you why in a second here. Or dinging your knife off a pot or a pan or something like that. So let's imagine that we've got some parsley on our blade. We're trying to move it into something else like so, and we've still got a little left. So we're dinging it off the pot. Okay. So not a chip, but arguably something much worse, which is a crack in our blade, which is going maybe not right up to the clad line, but very, very close to the clad line. A chip typically means that we've got some bending happening in our blade as well, right close to the edge. So that's also a really, really bad thing. So like I said, cracks are super bad for our knife. They may not seem like a big deal, but if not properly repaired, they're going to get worse and worse. The crack is going to continue up the body of the blade until the point where this whole part's just going to crack right off of our knife. Furthermore, you're going to need a machine to fix this guy. Fixing this with a hand stone or just a whetstone is going to be insanely difficult, if not impossible. And the vibrations from a machine may even weaken this blade further and may actually cause the knife to continue cracking further and further as we're trying to repair it. So this is we'll see what happens, but this might be a death sentence to this knife here, or at least cause us to completely reshape the knife and turn it into something that it is currently not. We're just gonna have a little stub by the end of this video. We're accepting sponsorships. Campbell's, we love your soup. Okay, so this is one that even I am tempted to do sometimes. I've opened my can. Instead of leaving a little connector there that I can causes the can to sort of flip up like this. It's in there. So, I can definitely understand why someone would do this. The only real tool that you're going to have that's going to fit in between the top and the sides of the can is a knife. It makes perfect sense. But watch, it's not going to do anything. We're so bad at this, Jake.
You have to have bent it that time.
Nope. Dang it! We got a little chip there. We got a little guy at the tip. I don't know if it's from this or if it's from something else. But anyways, again, I guess we got lucky there again. We did, not super lucky. We got a little chip. So yeah, just it goes to show that was an easy one. There's definitely times where they're more difficult to get off. Maybe your can opener's not great and it's still more connected than this one was and you're really prying with it. That's definitely going to cause damage. Next careless act would be dropping your knife. Now this is going to happen, I would say, to most people at some time in their life. The first ever Japanese knife I bought, I had on my board. Someone came to move my board, and rather than taking the knife off, they picked up the board and my knife at the same time and dumped her on the ground. Landed tip first onto tile and snapped a good centimeter of my tip right off of my knife. It was the second day I had ever used it and I was devastated. So don't drop your knife. We'll try on the board and then we'll try on a pot. Doesn't matter if your knife is $1 or $1,000. You should not grab for your knife if it is falling. Okay, here we go. 3, 2. Oh, wait. Safety first. Here we go.
It's the end grain.
We got it's a little bit bent, but really nothing super bad's gonna happen there. Wood, that's a good reason why you use a wood cutting board, is it's gonna keep you from damaging your knife and dulling it too fast. But I'm gonna say it's not gonna survive the pot. This is going to sort of emulate dropping it on a tile. I'm gonna stand back. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Well, I got a bullseye too. And we have achieved some of the most significant damage to our knife thus far, which is a missing tip. These guys are really not that big a deal to fix, to be honest with you. Like, what would we charge to fix that? Like 30, 40 bucks probably?
No,
not even. Like
we would add like
20 bucks?
Like 5 or 10.
5 or 10? Okay.
It comes back sharp.
Yeah, there you go. So, you know, dropping your knife certainly isn't fun, and having a missing tip on your knife is no fun either, but not the biggest deal in the world. So don't go dropping your knife if you can avoid it. Okay, fair enough. So we did end grain, we did pot. Now we're doing face grain maple. This was larchwood. So this is actually like a semi-soft wood. Maple is a hard wood. Let's see what happens. Get real up high there. Oh, another... Okay, no damage, no bending. That first drop I did from like, what, about here? So that's like, I don't know who is working that close to the floor. So we're gonna get even higher here and see what a real drop on the floor would do.
We're going right from the ceiling on this one.
That's a good one. We're hitting our stride here, guys. We got a big old chunk coming out of that one. So if we were at about $5 or $10, we're probably around the $20, $30 repair mark here. That's a large tip repair.
Which is 15 bucks.
15 bucks. There you go. Still not that bad.
I heard it ding
I will find it unpleasantly.
You'll find it with your...
The final cause of damage to your knife is going to be exposure to the elements. So this would include the dishwasher, leaving your knife submerged in water, not properly drying and cleaning your knife before it goes away into storage, storing it in a place that maybe is a little too humid or moist. Many of these things will probably cause more damage to the natural wooden handle of your blade rather than the blade itself. So for instance, the dishwasher, your blade, if it's stainless steel, likely won't see any damage. But if you've got a natural wood handle, over time, it's going to expand and contract and crack and eventually break away. Though I said likely no damage to your blade, if you continually put your blade into the dishwasher, even if it's stainless steel, it could still develop rust, especially if it's carbon steel, it most certainly will develop rust. And though you may be able to scrub that rust away, you don't know exactly what's happening underneath the surface of your blade. We get a lot of stainless steel knives into the shop for sharpening, and they'll have these little tiny black dots all over the place. That's referred to as pitting, and that's like a sort of like, you could think of it as like a degenerative disease for your steel. There's no way to fix that pitting. It's eating into the steel and likely going so far into the steel that as you remove steel, it's going to continue to just keep crumbling away. It's gonna be really a frustrating thing to fix when you're sharpening, because you're going at it, you feel like you're close, and then another little pit spot will develop another chip, or you'll see just like steel kind of fall away from your blade. So, you know, keep in mind that while you're not using your knife is still very important to think about. We would probably argue that the most damage that occurs, especially with regards to like rusting on a carbon steel knife, occurs during the storage of the knife and not during the use of the knife. So really be conscious of how you're storing your knives. Make sure they go away nice, dry and clean, and in a cool, dry environment. So another issue that we find is people bringing their knives to inexperienced sharpeners, ones that may use a belt sander or a sharpening wheel to sharpen your knives. Your knife was heat treated to a very specific point, and by using a belt sander and heating the steel up, you're going to cook that heat treat right out of your knife and turn that steel into mush, for lack of a better term. It may not look any different, it may not feel any different to the touch, but when you're using it, it's going to lose its edge super quick. This heating of the steel will also cause other issues like just deformation of your steel. When that steel gets soft, it's less likely to chip and break away and more likely to just bend and twist. And you'll look down the edge of your knife and you'll see all these wavy, bendy parts in your knife. This is gonna make it really difficult to sharpen in the future, almost impossible in fact, because you're gonna be removing material from one side of the wave and it's just gonna cause a big old gouge in your knife. We should also make the point that we did not make this video to make you feel bad about any damage that may be occurring to your knife. If you're new to Japanese knives, damage like this is totally normal and, like we said, can be very easily repaired with maybe the exception of this crack here. We also did not make this video to normalize any of the things that we did today. Just because we got away with some of the stuff that would normally cause damage does not mean that we are recommending that you use your knife in such a way. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel for more knife-related content, and until the next video, stay sharp.